back to Cruising in Action. Today chronicles my epic journey from Mainridge to Melbourne. Going in the reverse direction I went on my first episode. It's like a trip back through time. Or more alternatively, it's not. It's just another drive. Only this time with the added benefit of the soundtrack to glory. Considering the quality of it, I would not be surprised if it was nominated for an Academy Award. I really should know this, but I don't, and that is a problem. Or is it? That is the question. No, it's not. Point is, Glory. Now, that was a brilliant film about the Civil War, and it won Denzel Washington his first Academy Award, this time for Best Supporting Actor. Denzel Washington is literally the second greatest actor in the world, second only to Al Pacino. Interestingly enough, they both competed for the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1992, which was an incredible year for films. This time Denzel was nominated for Malcolm X in what I would believe is the greatest performance of his career, and lost to Al Pacino, who finally won for Scent of a Woman, in a performance which was just stellar. That was an incredible year for films. Other people that were nominated for the Best Actor Award was Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven, which won Best Picture that year, and Best Director for him. Robert Downey Jr. for his performance as Charlie Chaplin in Chaplin. The film itself was substandard, but Robert Downey Jr. has never given a better performance. And of course, the unforgettable Stephen Rea for The Crying Game, which is one of my all-time favourite movies. But we'll get back to that later. Point is, I am off on another drive. This time I'm headed home, and I decided to spice up this vlog with a touch of Q&A. I asked the Facebook communities to submit a long collection of questions to me. The response was less than stellar, but many of the questions are intriguing. They unlock a certain sense of insight into my mind, which will be chronicled on this journey home. Why do they call a double quarter pounder with cheese in France a Royale with cheese? Man, because they got the metric system, they don't know what a fuck a quarter pounder is. That, of course, is a reference to Pulp Fiction, one of my other favourite all-time movies. If you haven't seen that, you are wasting your life. Why does George McCrackers like pushing pens up his bum? Probably because he gets some kind of sodomistic pleasure out of the penetration. What is the meaning of life? Now, I'm uncertain if when I'm being posed this question, it is referring to the meaning of life as a whole or the meaning of individual lives. I can't answer the question of what the meaning of life as a whole means, but I can put forth one theory which was questioned in The Zero Theorem. The film The Zero Theorem, which is one of the most intellectually impressive films of 2014. Technically it's a 2013 film, but it was released in Australia in 2014, and I was lucky enough to bear witness to it at the cinema in Carlton. I thought it was brilliant. I'm very big on Terry Gilliam's films, and even though quite a bit of it was convoluted, it raised some very interesting theories. The film The Zero Theorem, it presents the idea that one day our entire universe will collapse in on itself. Earth will be destroyed, and therefore everything that our society of human beings has spent building towards will therefore become useless, as we will have built towards nothing. The Zero Theorem therefore suggests that our existence, our life as a whole, is meaningless. But it depends on if you view the meaning of life in the larger demographic or from person to person. The way I see it, every person has their own meaning in life. Every person contributes towards life as a whole in one way or another. My hope in the meaning of life is to become one of the greatest Australian filmmakers of all time. I want to change the face of Australian cinema. I want to inspire countless generations of people to get messages out and to entertain with cinema. I'd also like my meaning of life to be to encourage martial arts while desensitizing violence in the community, and also make a change for the gender politics of Australia to take further steps towards equality. Because equality is something that everyone's meaning of life should involve, in one way or another. Even people whose lives don't amount to too much and end up doing entry-level jobs consistently over the course of their life, such as, say, waiters or, I don't know, shelf stackers, they all contribute to our lives in one way or another. We need someone to bring the food to us. We need someone to make life easier for us, and that's exactly what they're doing. So, everyone's life has its own meaning, whether major or minor, depending on the demographic as a whole. But in the end, it's all about what human beings want to do. Lane change! What other things do you like that are not related to TV shows, movies, or the related industry? The interesting thing about this question is the person who asked me is my mother. Mum, if you really don't know the answer to this question, then we have a problem on our hands. It's what the Stu and Rosenberg film Cool Hand Luke would refer to as a failure to communicate.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
But let's take a crack at it. I do have a passion for a lot of multimedia-based artistic projects, such as, most specifically, films. I guess on a slightly related matter, I also have a passion for music. One of the questions is, who's your favourite band? And that's easy, Sum 41. Sum 41 was the first band that I ever discovered for myself. I did it in year 6 and I've loved them ever since. But the single greatest musician of all time, in my opinion, is easily Ozzy Osbourne. Other honourable mentions are, I love Colin Hay, and I also love System of a Down, who used to be my favourite band. I'm a musician myself. I'm trying to teach myself the guitar, but I also work as a rapper under the name Red 5. I have 2 singles so far, one good and one shit. Hopefully more to come, but I'm trying to come up with fresh material right now. I'll not try to force anything or go back on generic ground, because that's such an easy thing for musicians to do, as every musician on the radio today would dictate. My other passions. I'm very fond of animals. I turned vegetarian at the beginning of this year to encourage that. I have 2 pets, a golden retriever named Jessie, and a Rhodesian Ridgeback named Hendrix. Rhodesian Ridgebacks are my favourite breed of dog, and Hendrix has been with me ever since the end of year 5. Also, I don't like to boast about it because I don't want to sound like a cocky prick, but I do karate. I've been doing it for 8 years, ever since I started at the end of year 5, back when I was trying to act like Kazuya from Tekken. Karate has been one of the most key components to me developing as a human being. It has taught me countless values about honour, it has kept me physically fit and stable, and everything that my sensei has taught me for so many years is something that I could never possibly return. One of my ambitions one day is to participate in teaching that form of martial arts, which in this situation would be Goju Karate, Japanese for hard soft, to many other people, to pass the legacy on and to ensure that they get the same values and fitness that I was given the opportunity of. I really have a lot of interests. I'm also very fond of reading. I recently finished reading a book called Along Came a Spider, which I referenced in one of my earlier vlogs.
That's a quote from Tom Dunn.
Tom Dunn. Tom Dunn's the name of a character in a book I just read called Along Came a Spider, but that's a story for another day.
That's another day. That's definitely another day.
And it is the 4th greatest book I've ever read. The first is The Invention of Hugo Cabret, which was turned into the movie Hugo. Second is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and third is The Shining. 4th is Along Came a Spider, and I was so enthralled and excited by it that I went out and bought 10 of the 21 sequels. But the lead character, Alex Cross, is such a great character. Currently, I'm halfway through reading the currently unpublished novel Sparks from Ashes, which I really hope becomes published one day. Potentially 2 people on Facebook would know anything about it. It's a fantasy novel written by talented author Stephanie Wright. It's the 3rd in the Zorian sagas, the first 2 of which have not actually been written yet, at least as far as I know. It is a complex and touching fantasy story, yet does not adhere to the young adult formula. It has sophisticated and poetic language, almost along the lines of Shakespeare, except not being completely retarded. It presents an interesting society with an intriguing adventure, and it is an incredibly well-written novel. I wouldn't call it very good because today I watched Dead Poets Society and Robin Williams said that I should never use the word very as it is lazy. Let's just say I was ecstatic about the novel and would vastly recommend it to the wider community. Among that, other interests I have, really I'm interested in quite a lot of things. But anyone can tell you that filmmaking is my #1 passion. So there you go. Which boy is the most attractive? Now this refers to a group of fellas I refer to as the Bowen Boys, who I went to Bowen High School with. Out of all of them, now we've got a very good range here. And out of all of them, I must say, Alex has a distinct charm to him, and Mike is a babe, but hands down, Tommy D. Which horse will win? No horses are going to win this year. 2 of them have already died as a result of horse racing related injuries, and death is a victory for no one. What is a horse? Sarah Jessica Parker is a horse. How long will this series be going for, and will I have to think of stupid questions to ask every episode? This series, Cruising in Action, will go for one of 2 time periods. 1, until Michael Bay wins the Academy Award for Best Director. Or 2, which is much more likely, until I grow weary of creating these vlogs. And no, Tom, you will not have to ask questions every episode, only on the episodes I decide a Q&A. Might not make another Q&A, it depends on how the response to this video turns out. So far the response to the series has been more positive. Of course it's more positive when I have someone else in the car. So this is a very experimental video, hopefully it turns out well. What turned you on to film in the first place? That's a very interesting question. It dates back as far as, I'd say about year 6. Now year 6 was a time when I discovered Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time, which to this day remains the single greatest video game I have ever played in my life. Now, I have a specific memory of playing this game. At the point in the game where I drew the Sword of Time and therefore became frozen for 7 or 8 years until the protagonist Link became an adult, chaos was drawn to the world because Ganondorf accessed the Triforce. I remember when I played this game, when I pulled this sword and realized all the chaos that I had caused, I honestly could not sleep at night knowing that fictional game characters were suffering because of my actions. I particularly thought of all the people in the Kakariko village who were overcome by the fear. It was so awful to think about that it actually made it difficult for me to sleep. I always had difficulty sleeping because I have a mild case of ADHD and I struggle to remain in one place for a consistent amount of time if I'm not stimulated. Hence one of the reasons I like having a camera to talk to while I'm driving. When I moved with my mother to North Bowen, she gave me a television in my own room. And I was ecstatic about that because that's what every child dreams of. We also got Foxtel, and on that I discovered 2 classic 1980s sitcoms. We also got Foxtel, which I used as a medium to discover 2 classic sitcoms. One was Different Strokes, which a lot of people will remember for sporting this catchphrase.
What you talking about, Willis?
The other was The Cosby Show. I thought both shows were hilarious, so I decided to go out and get DVD copies of them. Back then I had a system for raising money where I sold cans of Pepsi at school for a cheaper rate than the canteen. I actually made hundreds of dollars before, after 9 months of doing it, the coordinators caught onto my scheme. I wasn't even trying to hide it, I was proudly flaunting the fact that I was out there selling cans. People stole from me and stuff, but I made countless profits from it, and that funded a lot of my video game collecting and my DVD collection. I bought many seasons of The Cosby Show and I loved it. And I could only get access to 2 seasons of Different Strokes because only 2 had been released on DVD in Region 4, aka Australia. I started watching these shows in bed and they helped me sleep. Because while the thoughts would run rampant in my head, TV would distract me, it would tire out my eyes and would encourage me to sleep. And even when my eyes were tired but I couldn't sleep, I'd roll over, close them and listen to them and visualize what was going on in the episode, while taking joy out of the sounds of the charms of Bill Cosby and his family. It was great. Anyway, eventually I sort of transitioned from that to films, starting with Teen Wolf, moving on to the action movie Speed under recommendation from my friend Aaron, and so on, so forth, until I just became embroiled in it. From then on, I had so many thoughts about these films, I started reviewing them. And ever since I was young, I enjoyed making films when I got my first camera. So there's a long history behind my obsession with films. And as the years have gone on, I've gotten so much more appreciation for all kinds of films. All kinds from different genres because of the way they make me feel. 2 examples. The movies 8 Mile and Hustle and Flow made me feel inspired enough to go out and make my own rap songs, which I did, even though I've still only made 2. And the movie The Expendables 2 reinvigorated a lot of my passion for martial arts, at a point in my life where I was slumping and uncertain about where I was going with it. I have honestly never loved karate more than after I saw The Expendables 2 for the second time. It was great the first time, but it took 2 viewings for me to realize that it is actually one of the greatest movies ever made, no matter what anyone says. So that's what turned me on to films. Your favorite horror movie, 3 or 5? Okay, let's see, my number 1 favorite horror movie is easy. It's Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, because Sam Raimi's balance between slapstick humor and seriously dark horror on a very low budget as being a throwback to a lot of exploitation films is just brilliant. And the leading performance from Bruce Campbell is just groovy. It's easily the best of the trilogy. Also up there is Aliens. Now Aliens is a lot of things. It's a horror film, it's an action film, it's a science fiction film, but it is still a horror film. It's absolutely petrifying. The atmosphere is brilliant. The step up in scale from the first Alien film is one of the best things that James Cameron has ever done as a film director. And the leading performance of Sigourney Weaver is quite possibly the greatest female performance I've seen in the history of cinema. If for nothing else, then for this one moment.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Also up there, surprisingly enough, the classic horror film Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. This is famous for being the first adaptation of the novel Dracula, with slight elements changed so that they could adapt it without paying the rights for it. Of course, that didn't work, and all the copies except one had to be destroyed after a lawsuit. That one survived, went around the world, has been copied numerous times, and now the film exists as the masterpiece it is. That's such an interesting piece of film history. The film itself is scary as hell. It's a silent movie, and yet the atmosphere is built on 2 things. Partially the musical score in the film I saw, and the leading performance of Max Schreck as Count Orlok. There's this one moment where he walks into a room, and he stares directly at the camera. And his stare just pierces the screen and looks into your soul, and it is so petrifying. I watched it in the dark in my room alone, and it was just scary. It was like he was actually in the room and he was coming for me. And for a film from 1922 to actually do that, it's just a film that has battled age for so long and has come out so victorious. And I guess also up there would be, okay, I'm gonna have to make it 6. Silence of the Lambs, because that was brilliant, although that's a mix of horror and thriller. This Is the End, although again that's a mix of horror and comedy because it's funny and it's freaky. And also The Thing, because that's one of John Carpenter's greatest films. It's just scary as hell. It capitalizes on magnificent visual effects and his keen abilities for puppetry, and of course the leading performance of Kurt Russell, who's a legendary actor. Which is your favourite of the Halloween series? Now here's the thing, I've only seen one Halloween film. I really need to see more. The one I've seen is the first one, which again is a John Carpenter film. And it was great. It was clearly a classic for the slasher genre. It featured an interesting villain, plenty of kills, and more than enough nudity to suffice, thanks to Sandy Johnson and PJ Soles. I haven't seen any others. I saw part of Halloween 3, which is considered by many to be the worst in the series due to bearing no relation to the rest of them. But that was just a couple of minutes of it, so I've still only seen one. But I do need to get out there and see sequels, because I haven't seen many of these low-budget slasher movie sequels. The two exceptions would be I've seen all the Scream films, with only the first Scream being the good one. And I've seen Friday the 13th Part 1, Part 2, and Part 5. Part 2 was crap, but it had a slight increase in nudity. Part 5 was even worse, but it had a bigger increase in nudity and therefore was better. See, nudity is one of the primary factors in turning these guilty pleasures into a decent film, and any fan of those movies can tell you. I'm looking at you, Sam Hamilton. How can you catch Ebola? You catch Ebola by coming into contact with someone who already has it, most specifically their body fluids, i.e. their blood or their saliva. A lot of people catch Ebola when they're treating people who have Ebola, or when they're burying the corpses of them because they have to come in contact with them. How will you go about single-handedly preventing Ebola from entering Australia? Well, I don't know that I can do that. I think it's already made its way in somehow. I'm looking at you, Micah, but I'll tell you what. If the massive Ebola asteroid is ever going to come into contact with Australia, I'll send Bruce Willis up in a spaceship to drill into it and blow it up, and that'll make everyone happy. What really constitutes flirting? Well, flirting is defined as when you play at either real or not real romantic interest with someone as a way of stimulating conversation with them. It can be either simply friendly or it can be sexual. It depends on what scale you're comfortable with, really. How do you know when you're being too invasive? When the person you're attempting to flirt with is burning your eyes out with pepper spray. Can I be in an episode? Yes, Becky, you can. If you have AIDS, do you also have Ebola?
No!
Did Ebola start in the Ebony community?
No!
How do you feel about nude photography? Very fondly. What is your opinion of the NWO? I'm presuming he's referring to the New World Order, and my opinion is that somehow they're always watching us. How would you go about stopping the Holocaust prior to millions of Jews dying? Fuck, that is an edgy question. Alright. I guess the best manner of preventing the Holocaust I could think of without getting involved in the German economy political upheaval would be to go back in time and encourage Hitler to take on a career as an artist instead of as a politician. Because he actually did have a talent for painting. And if he had pursued that instead of pursuing a career in violent anti-Semitism, then perhaps the world would have been a lot better. And when I say perhaps, I mean over 6 million people wouldn't have been killed, so yeah, it would have been better. There's a billionaire standing naked on the road, inviting people to join him and do a naked cha-cha with him. What do you do? I pull up beside him and tell him, Tony Abbott, put your pants back on, you sick bastard, and stop stealing money from our universities. Can I get a lift, please? Sure, Kira. Where do you want to go? Would you ever do a hot yoga class? If I figured out what it was, maybe. Can you outdo Max's poses? Well, let's compare. I'd say that pretty much speaks for itself. According to the latest issue of Yachting Magazine, the best pocket cruiser currently available on the market is the Black Cove 30. Could you think of a yacht that is more reliable and cost efficient? Actually, I could. The Greenline 33 has been praised as being very cost effective due to its hybrid drive, which requires no maintenance. It requires 10 times less energy than most diesel fuel engines, and it supplies cost and emission-free sailing. Its lithium battery guarantees an estimated 10 years of life, and it has a 5-cylinder marine diesel engine. So the Greenline 33 is definitely the way to go if you're a yachting aficionado. Is there anyone in your life you would die for? If so, who? Bruce Campbell. Beep, here comes the... Well, that was out of tune. Ebola is the new AIDS. What do you think?
Fuck off.
If you sneeze in one's face, can you catch Ebola?
And again, fuck off.
Ebola is a generic word used to describe AIDS. Is that true?
That's a hat trick. Fuck off.
What are your plans on making Trav shut his give mouth? Using responses from the in-betweeners to any further questions he asked about Ebola.
The fucking baguette-eating dickhead frog.
Why is Alex a little bitch? Well, that label is debatable, but if he is, it's because Cassie wanted it that way. And now we're out of questions. Stay tuned for my nonsensical rambling for the remainder of the trip. Let's see, what did I do today? I got up at 8, slept until about 9, then got up and watched Dead Poet Society with my father. It was so depressing to watch because it's a beautiful movie, but you see Robin Williams in that film, and at that film he's at some kind of energetic high point in his life. He's telling everyone to seize the day, carpe diem, to capitalize on their living by talking about how life is short. And the fact that this year he had to stop doing that, he couldn't do it anymore, and he ended it all on his own terms, it's just heartbreaking. It's still physically impossible for me to believe that Robin Williams is gone. He was an incredibly talented man. He was incredibly funny. He was excellent in countless films. And he has entertained so many people for so many generations, ranging from kids' films like Aladdin to more adult-themed films like The Fisher King. He reached out and he touched so many people. And the fact is now, he's gone. And not by natural causes, by suicide, because of his depression. He hid his depression for so long with his comic persona, and it's just heartbreaking to think about. Here comes the... I was on June that time. Remember one time towards the end of my Baldwin High School career, I remember I was sitting in class with Mr. Hurd, and I needed to go to the bathroom. I said, "Mr. Hurd, can I please go to the bathroom?" Because that's a polite way you address one of them. He said, "Can you wait till the end of class?" This is the response that every student who has gone to that school, or possibly any other school, will have been getting for years. So you know what I said to him? If I could wait till the end of class, do you think I'd be asking? And he said, "There's no need to be rude. The public school system really annoys me. They expect you to remember all this information, which you're never going to use in life, to be able to decide on your entire career by the end of high school. And yet, they want you to ask permission to use the bathroom. They require you to ask permission and to dump your waste on the basis of timing they find appropriate." As you can see, the video I've got prior to posting this one, entitled The Gashku Seminar of 2014. Every year, Sensei Bruce Hyland and Sensei Eddie Zennel host a 3-day karate training seminar entitled Gashku, where students of all different karate styles from all over Melbourne come and participate in training together. It's one of the greatest karate experiences any student can have. This year I took my GoPro and I filmed an extensive amount of footage, and I edited it in time with the theme song to The Expendables 2. The intro alone took me 7 hours to make, the remainder took me 2 hours. There was over 100 gigs of footage there, and I tried to harness the best that I could. It was an incredible experience, and I guess the fact that I was able to turn it into a video to show people what it was truly like, that's one of my ways of repaying them. Look well ahead, because the alternative is looking sick ahead. Get it? Here comes the 2 times. Well, now that CD's come to an end and is back at the start again, I'd say it's about time I change it. This truck's slowing down, now it's speeding up. Listen to the classic rock of Chuck Berry. Maybelline, why can't you be true? Oh, Maybelline, why can't you be true? You done started back doing things you used to do. Little known fact about Chuck Berry, he has more than one song. Everyone's heard Johnny B. Good. Deep down in Louisiana, close to New Orleans, right back up in the woods amongst the evergreens, there stood a log cabin made of earth and wood, where lived a country boy named Johnny B. Good, who never ever learned to read or write so well, but he could play that guitar just like ringing a bell. Go, go! Go, Johnny, go, go! Only thing is, as I'm about to show you, a lot of his songs start the same way. Fun fact, there are actually 3 really famous Chuck Berry songs all on this album. And a lot of people don't know that he was the artist of 2 of them. Riding along in my automobile, my baby beside me at the wheel, I stole a kiss at a turn of her mouth, my curiosity running wild, cruising and playing the radio, with no particular place to go. This is one of those songs which has become overused so many times in pop culture that it's easy to hear it. And that is a Chuck Berry song. Now here's another one which you all would have heard if you'd seen Pulp Fiction. There was a teenage wedding and the old folks wished him well. You could see that Pierre did truly love the mademoiselle. And now the young monsieur and madame have rung the chapel bell. C'est la vie, say the old folks. It goes to show you never can tell. The fact is, Chuck Berry music has become so ingrained in our pop culture without us even knowing it. And that is just great. And now you know it, thanks to me. Silver bells hanging on a string. She told me it was my ding-a-ling-a-ling. Oh, my ding-a-ling, my ding-a-ling. I want you to play with my ding-a-ling. I roll over Beethoven, tell Tchaikovsky to lose. They're going 50. The speed is 60 because some dickhead's lugging a washing machine. It's a shame you can't use that washing machine to clean up his driving. Get it? Now, a thing I like to do every time, which will fuck up the camera, I'm going downhill, turn it into neutral, and I use the momentum to get a good parking spot. Right, this time I don't even have to worry about it. It's a good one right there. Back home.